to be disbursed in the context of what we call a first review. In the context of this program of covering 2 years, which was initially approved at the end of April, we have 9 tranches and 8 reviews. So this was the first review of the program, and it's an important step for us to take a view on the evolution of the economy, eventual adjustments to the program, the policies going forward, the commitment of the authorities. So it's a good opportunity to take a step back and look at how things are going. Just some information first, maybe on the material for you that you can find on our website. We have published the report for the first review. It's a pretty long report. It's a bit more than 100 pages, but it has a lot of information on our forecast, on the steps that the authorities are ready to take, the policies that they are ready to implement. So this is the main component of what we have published. We have published also some shorter pieces on the Ukrainian economy and the stabilization of the economy. And we also have published a report called, it's a diagnostic study on anti-corruption, improving the business environment, and the judicial system. This study was prepared by the authorities with the assistance of our legal department, and was basically designed to assess the situation with regard to anti-corruption, to look at the different options possible, both on anti-corruption, but also on improving the business environment and improving the judicial system. This was designed to basically help in the process of reforms, and it will be updated regularly. So this has been published in English, but we hope to publish in the next few days in Ukrainian as well. So I hope this will be useful material to contribute to the already ongoing and rich debate on anti-corruption in particular. Now, on the substance of the first review, the mission was here in July and stayed a few weeks. Basically, a review mission has the purpose of looking backward, basically looking at the performance under the program and how the different criteria were met, how the different targets were met, how the different policies were implemented. And then there is a forward-looking component, which is basically looking at the forecast for the economy, for the fiscal situation, for the financial sector, and also discussing the policies that could be implemented. The backward-looking component of the review was really relatively straightforward in a way. We saw some strong commitment from the authorities. There were, of course, some slippages, but overall we saw a strong commitment, and this was reflected in the performance under the program. What was more, I think, what was more problematic was the assessment of the economy, where it was going, and what was particularly challenging, of course, was assessing the impact of the conflict in the east of Ukraine. That has been actually the main challenge for this review, and continues to be the main challenge. The conflict in the east of Ukraine has implications for the evolution of the economy. It has implications on the evolution of GDP, on exports, on investment, on employment. It has an impact on the fiscal situation, both on the side of tax revenues, which were particularly weak, starting in June in particular, and on expenditures, so an increase in security and military expenditures. But it also had an impact on the demand for foreign exchange from households. We saw, for example, a deterioration in the east of Ukraine, while in the rest of the country the situation was stabilizing. It had an impact on the banking sector. We saw declines in deposits pretty pronounced in the east of Ukraine in particular, which were much more pronounced than in the rest of the country. So the impact of the conflict was multidimensional in a way, and led us to reassess both our forecast and the policies going forward. On the forecast side, that means that we had to reassess our growth forecast in particular and our fiscal projections. We revised our growth forecast down to minus 6.5% for this year and 1% for next year. We revised our fiscal projections and all attendant projections and basically the different variables I mentioned earlier. On the policy side, faced with this challenge of the conflict in eastern Ukraine, the government has put in place some compensatory measures. We agreed also with the government that the fiscal stance for this year should accommodate a good part of the contraction in the economy. That is reflected in relaxed targets on the fiscal, but with some additional adjustment in the coming years. At the same time, the government has put in place a supplementary fiscal package, which was voted in during the month of August to compensate for these adverse developments. There were also some slippages in Naftogaz, in the energy company. Some of this was due to the ongoing dispute on prices with Gazprom, but also there is the impact of the depreciation of the exchange rates, which had an impact on the accounts of Naftogaz as well. And Naftogaz has also committed to increase the collection of its receivables, basically some past due debts, in particular from heating companies. There were a number of other compensatory steps which were taken also by the central bank. The targets for reserves were revised. The situation has been difficult on that side, but the National Bank has been committed to a floating exchange rate. It has faced some volatility in the last few weeks, but the main point is that it has been quite active in addressing this excessive volatility. So, with all these adjustments in mind, we had a board approval at the end of August. Like for the initial program request, I think the staff tried to provide a candid assessment of the risks going forward. The risks include the risk to this basically to our forecast. One is, of course, the evolution of the situation in the east of Ukraine. If the situation deteriorates further, of course, it will have an impact on the economic situation, and something that we will have to look at carefully during the next review. Of course, there is a risk of trade tensions with one of the main trading partners of Ukraine. And there are, of course, all other attendant risks, in particular on the financial sector, but in other areas as well. But mostly, the main risk remains the situation in the east of Ukraine and the conflict and the impact that it has on the economic activity. The next opportunity for us to review the situation, I mean, of course, we monitor the situation very closely. We try to update our forecast regularly. We will have an opportunity to update our forecast for what we call the World Economic Outlook, which is a publication that we do for all of our member countries, and which is published right before the annual meetings of the IMF and the World Bank, which will take place in the middle of October. So at this time, we will already have an opportunity to publish revised forecast, updated forecast. And we will have a review at the end of the year, which at the request of the authorities, of the Ukrainian authorities, was merged. That is, we were initially planning to have a second and third review, and these two reviews will be merged for two main reasons. One, the first reason is because we had a delay in the first review. The second is also because we have the early parliamentary elections, which makes it more difficult to have continuous policy discussions. So the authorities requested that basically these two reviews be merged and will take place at the end of 2014, which will not affect, in fact, the calendar so much of disbursement for the year of 2014. So it will be also an opportunity to, this review will also be an opportunity to take stock of the situation, of the impact of the situation in the east of Ukraine. In our report, we have presented some illustrative scenarios on the different risks, and we have presented one just illustrative scenario, which is contained in a box, basically in the report. But the idea was just to show what could be, in a given scenario, the impact of continued tensions, the impact on basically the fiscal situation, the monetary situation, and the impact on reserves. And this was basically giving an estimate of the potential decline in reserves. Just a word of caution on this. This decline in reserves is estimated not assuming any change in policies. So basically no change in the exchange rate, no change in fiscal or monetary policies. So it's all of the things being equal. Basically, if nothing is done. So this is basically where we are and what was the assessment of the first review. We, of course, our cooperation doesn't stop with a review of our lending program. We have quite a comprehensive technical assistance program, both with the government and with the National Bank of Ukraine. So we constantly have missions coming to Kiev to help design policies and design reforms. What is important for us is, of course, the commitment of the authorities to conduct the reforms. This is fundamental. What we had seen in previous program was a lack of commitment, which led us to stop the programs at that time. So far, we have seen a strong commitment from the authorities. It will be important to continue on this good path, to continue with reforms. That will be fundamental, and especially given the challenging situation. We are well aware of the current difficulties, but we also think that it's the current situation, which is very challenging, should be also taken as an opportunity to conduct reforms, to strengthen reforms, a process which might actually be more difficult in different times. But this is an opportunity to make a substantial difference and to conduct reforms and to strengthen the Ukrainian economy so that it can grow in a sustainable manner in coming years, to modernize the economy, to make it more transparent, to make it less prone to corruption. So that will be a fundamental opportunity. So I often hear that, I'm often told that we hope that this time is different. I would say that this time has to be different and has to continue to be different because so far we have seen a good commitment for reforms. Now I'm ready to take your questions, if you have any.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vacher. Do we have any questions? We have a question here.
Thank you. Darina Krasnolska, Bloomberg. So,
Bloomberg,
how much, what disbursement from the IMF may be if two reviews are merged? Thank you.
So far, we have disbursed 4.6 billion, including the first tranche and the second tranche. And we would expect approximately 2.7 billion to be disbursed in the combined reviews at the end of the year, depending on the exchange rate, of course, on the SDR, but it's detailed.
We have one more question here.
Lisa Fronova, did I understand you right that the third and the first disbursement can be by the end of 2014?
It is the plan indeed that we will combine these disbursements, and if everything goes well, we expect the board meeting and for these combined reviews to take place before the end of 2014. Once we have the board meeting, the approval of the board, the disbursement takes place shortly afterwards. So of course, we have to stick to that calendar, and but that is a plan right now, basically.
Mr. Vacher, you have pointed out a strong commitment from the government to conduct pending and sometimes painful reforms. How do you assess the progress to date?
No, as I said, the progress has been very strong, and there were a number of difficult reforms which were put in place, in particular on the energy sector, for example, which was a difficult reform to undertake, but which was really necessary. We certainly encourage the government to proceed further with reforms. There are some items which are included in our program. For example, we know that addressing issues in corruption and the business environment will be critical to ensure that over time growth can pick up in Ukraine. We believe there is a strong potential for the economy. But in order for this potential to be unleashed and for investment to come to Ukraine, there is a strong need to address corruption, which is a big issue, and to improve the business environment. So in the context of our program, we have, for example, a commitment to put in place an anti-corruption bureau, which is only one element of the fight against corruption. It will not solve all the problems, but it's a good first step. Similarly, the government has committed to propose an action plan on deregulation. We have seen that there were some good first steps on the thinking on deregulation, including some of it which was presented in this same place. But this will need, of course, to be implemented, and implementation is always the critical aspect. So on these two aspects, on the Anti-Corruption Bureau and deregulation, we certainly hope to see things moving forward. On this part of anti-corruption and the business environment, there will be further steps which should be taken. The same on the judicial system. All these aspects are really critical. On fiscal policies, there was also a strong commitment to address imbalances and a very conservative policy put in place so far. So here again, we have seen a strong commitment. The same on the financial sector, where the National Bank of Ukraine has been quite active and proceeding as initially agreed on financial sector reform, conducting the diagnostic study and stress test on banks. So this is all an ongoing process, and so far we have seen a strong commitment of the authorities, which is encouraging. But again, it will be critical that this effort is sustained, and that the commitment to reform is basically shown also in implementation. We also believe that we as international financial institutions have a role to push for these reforms, but in areas like anti-corruption, the role of civil society will be fundamental, and there is a great role to be played by civil society in continuing to push for these reforms to take place.
Чи є ще запитання, колеги?
Any more questions?
For coming here and for briefing us on these aspects of funding allocation. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing you here again. Колеги, наш наступний брифінг через півгодини.
Our next briefing will be in half an hour. Thank you.